just reevaluating your goals and remembering why you're doing what you're doing. Everybody's underutilizing your tech stack, basically. One of the big areas is like drafting and research, and a lot of my legal assistants get a little intimidated by that. They have these self-limiting beliefs they're never going to go beyond maybe just a few people in their firm potentially, because they want to micromanage and they don't learn how to delegate. There's this one, I remember, a client from Angola. Such a great story. I need to turn that into a movie.
This is The Litigator's Edge, the podcast where smart strategy, practical innovation, and real-world experience come together to move litigation forward. Each week, we sit down with attorneys, legal tech leaders, and trusted advisors who are rethinking how great legal work gets done. You'll hear how law firms are building a competitive advantage. These conversations are grounded, insightful, and designed to help you refine how you work and how you win. Here is your host, Aniket Sawant.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Litigator's Edge, a podcast where innovative attorneys reveal the strategies that have transformed their legal practice. My name is Aniket Sawant, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Threadio. It's my privilege to have Ruby Powers as my guest today. Ruby is truly multifaceted. She's a board-certified immigration attorney, an expert in law practice management, a consultant, an author, and a podcaster. Ruby, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'd like to start, Ruby, as I do with all my guests, by asking you to please share either a fun fact about yourself that people may not know, or a cringe joke for our audience.
Okay, I'll keep you all from a cringe joke because I was having a hard time trying to remember or think of one. But an interesting fact about myself is that I've lived in 6 different countries: UAE, Belgium, Spain, Turkey, Mexico, and the United States.
That's wonderful. Was this during childhood or college or early career or when?
Predominantly as a grown-up. I grew up in US and Mexico, then later lived as exchange student to Belgium, a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar to Spain, I went back to Mexico in college, and then lived in Turkey with my husband's family, and lived in UAE with my husband was doing consulting job.
Well, I'm sure that multicultural experience informs your work and profession as an immigration attorney for sure.
It definitely gives me street cred with the different regions of the world. So I have some more parts of the world I should get exposed more to, but definitely adds to conversation to understand how things work. And everywhere I lived, like at least more than 6 months or a year or more. So definitely had some chance to get to know the culture and a bit of the language as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Not just a tourist, not just
like a week or
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. And actually, that interesting segue into my next question, which is, I think of every attorney who comes onto the show, who makes the time for the show, as a superhero, and every superhero has an origin story. What's yours?
I've come from a line of entrepreneurs from my dad's side and also from my mom's side. But my mom's parents were missionaries in Mexico. And so that gave me an intercultural upbringing between German farmers in Missouri and American missionaries in Mexico. My parents decided to land in San Antonio, Texas. I'm still in Texas, but I did travel to all those other countries for a while. Between just seeing the hard work, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the giving back to their community and to humanity, I think that helped shape me becoming an immigration attorney and whatever expertise I have, like law practice management, wanting to give back through sharing information through like podcasting, teaching, writing, and being an attorney.
That's wonderful. Can you walk us through maybe a little bit of your journey from your early childhood and the experiences you had with your parents in all those locations, through college, law school, and how you essentially got your footing as an immigration attorney?
Oh, I think we'll have to talk at 2.0 speed. My dad recently passed away, and I've been going through a lot of his documents. And so it's been an interesting journey to even watch his journey, because some of those things get glossed over when you're a kid, you don't know. But basically, my parents met in Dallas, and then they didn't know where we should grow up. And so eventually, like I was mentioning, we went to San Antonio after spending a little time in a small little teeny weeny town in Missouri, which really gives me perspective of small town America and Midwest. But then I also lived on a ranch running free, playing with scorpions and wild dogs. and pigs and random things in Mexico. And I love that ranch dearly in Saltillo, Mexico. I'm going to go back again pretty soon. Then San Antonio, big city, compared to my Missouri upbringing. Gave a lot of opportunity, and I'm so grateful to the education system. And then I later was exchange student to Belgium because of Rotary was a great influence on me. And then to learn another language, I didn't speak a lick of French when I landed in the French part of Belgium. Lived with host families, saw the world, met great friends. Had a big influence on me later becoming an immigration attorney, and then later went to UT undergrad in Austin. Graduated pretty quickly, moved to DC, and worked for the Committee on Homeland Security, which later also led to my interest in immigration as well. And then what did I do next? We went to Spain with my husband. I was a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar. And then we also were living in Turkey for a little bit there. Went to North UNC for law, then visited U of H my last year. That I graduated during the Great Recession. Fun times. But a lot of people started a business during that time. And after getting laid off twice in '09, I decided to go ahead and start my business, which I was wanting to do anyway. I just needed a good reason. I've had my firm ever since, which is, I think, 16 years this November. And since then, had a couple kids. We went over to Dubai for a little while and wrote a couple books, became a professor, and still practicing. A lot of people are like, "Do you still practice?" Yes, I still practice. I still go to court and asylum interviews and adjustment. It's a lot. Like, I think I'm getting to the point where it's hard to do both. I truly enjoy it, and I think there's a shortage of those who truly understand the complexities of immigration law right now. And so it's feel like it's also like a calling them to stay in this space to help those in need. But I guess the other thing I forgot to mention was as I was growing in the law practice management space, legal tech became like a subspecialty of mine. And I think one of the biggest reasons was because when I went lived in Dubai, I was running my law firm remotely from 11 and 12-hour time difference using the technology that existed 14 years ago. And so much has changed since then, but it was possible then. Now, lawyers on the beach, everyone's talking, Facebook group, everybody's talking about how you can just run a law firm from anywhere. But I did it back when we didn't Zoom, I don't think existed at the time. I had to use Skype. And
You were remote before remote was even cool. So
yeah, before it was cool. And so then, like, when the pandemic came, I was all like, "Hold my beer. I got this."
that's fantastic. That's wonderful. There's so many threads to what you said, Ruby, but maybe let's start with one. And we're connected on LinkedIn, and I see your posts, and they're very from the heart in terms of you help one client get their green card or citizenship or their asylum application went through. Given today's complex time and given the sweep of your career, what's a case or matter that stands out that fundamentally changed how you approach what you do from an immigration law practice perspective?
I think that's a great question because we need to reflect as lawyers on these cases that we can just remember why we do what we do and remember to fuel that flame of why we want to continue to do this work. There's this one I remember a client from Angola, such a great story. I need to turn that into a movie. I keep saying I'm going to do that, but I need to carve out some time for that. Family, oh, crazy story getting to Brazil and going through the jungles and finding out the wife finds out she's pregnant. This is a time during Zika. It's like, oh my gosh. And then carrying the children through the jungle. Later on, I get hired to by nonprofit to help the dad, and we win with very little prep time. It was crazy, and he's detained, and then that therefore saved the rest of the family. And he made it easy to work with him because he was so passionate and smart and just a great advocate. And I was like, "Well, what were we gonna do if I didn't help you?" He's like, "Well, God was gonna be my lawyer." So I was like, "Okay." I always get a little emotional about that one. But other ones more recently, just a mom who recently became disabled through a violent situation and working to reunify her with her children. We're taking that case pro bono right now. And just the more I take layers of the onion of that case, I find more crazy things that I makes you take not want to take anything for granted that you have in your normal life. But there's so many stories, honestly, probably for some multiple books and movies. But right now we just have to keep powering through and do the best we can just due to the volume and the complexity But I do like to pause and then for my team as well to reflect and say, this is what we did. This is what we were able to do together. And let's don't forget that.
That's so powerful, Ruby. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the ability to change people's lives for the better in a meaningful way. I'm sure that that means a lot to them, obviously, but I'm sure it has an impact on you and your team. And even hearing it, it was just very nice to hear. So thank you for sharing that. Moving to the other business aspects of what you do. So you're obviously an immigration attorney with the matters that you've successfully handled, like the ones that you shared. But you're also, an author, a consultant, and a podcaster, all related to the practice of law. You shared this a little bit in sort of your journey, but can you walk us through when you realized or how you decided that in addition to being an immigration attorney, which is hard enough, as you mentioned, you also decided to take on these other multiple tracks all grouped around the practice of law?
Well, I have to thank the American Immigration Lawyers Association because I was on the Law Practice Management Committee for about 4 years. And part of our duty was to churn out articles and content about law practice management. And really, that was the beginning of me wanting to write content for my book. And I was just thinking, like, here, I feel like, when you teach, you have to master the content. And I also was thinking, like, let's don't reinvent the wheel. Like, there's been a lot of other people in business. There's a lot of business books out there. There's a lot of courses and trainings. If we could just get a little dose of that, and even though as lawyers we don't get a lot of that training in school, we don't go get our MBA. Most of us don't have an MBA as well. And so my thought was if I can help lawyers just even by 5 or 10, 20% not have to learn the hard way on how to run their practice and they could focus more on practicing law or just to have more control over the success in their life and what they want in life and in terms of their practice, then if I can help them do that, then they'll be able to help and make that impact on their community, their business, their family, their clients. And so that's really where it came from. Having come from a long line of entrepreneurs on both sides, I just being a child of an entrepreneur, seeing them putting so many long hours, and just think like if they could have figured out a way to just have a little more control of their schedule, then in that sort of that ripple effect on families. And so that's why I wanted to give back. It was like a skill, a strength of mine, led to writing my first book with Ayla in 2019, and then self-publishing my current book, Power Up Your Practice, which is available on Amazon. And and then also the podcast with the same name because some people read, some people listen, some people hear different things from different voices. And so that I also began teaching at the South Texas College of Law, law practice management, and been in that space. And so I'll be starting my sixth semester this fall, and just love now the journey of those newly minted attorneys are reaching out to me for advice, and it's great. I love this ecosystem that I'm in.
When I was doing some research on all your various activities that you do in the law practice space, one tagline that stood out was that you help lawyers work on the business and not in it. And so, two questions related to that. One is, what does that tagline actually mean, and how can a litigator or a lawyer, sort of apply that to what they do? And second is, what is the single biggest mistake that lawyers make when it comes to running their own practices?
Those are a lot of good questions to unpack there. Well, the first one, working on the business, not in it. And I didn't invent those words originally, but the idea is that you need to carve out some time and figure out how do you want to run things. So if that means like a few hours on a Friday or a couple of, a half day every once a month or something like that, like what is your master plan? What are you doing? If you're just being like a little puppeteer on the calendar or hamster wheel and you do whatever's on your calendar, then it's just sort of like getting in your car and just driving aimlessly. You need to have a plan. Like we all get in our cars and we have our little Google Maps or Waze or something, right? And then we're like, we know how long it's going to take, and is it red or yellow or blue and or green, and what we're going to see along the way. We really make a lot of plans in some of our little small places in our life, but we don't think about the big picture. I think a lot of times when we like, oh, get a good great go to good school, become a lawyer, get a job, and then we stop making new goals. We need to make goals. We need to have numbers, we need to have statistics, and we need to carve out time. Like in fact, I'm actually having a almost a full day retreat with my leadership team later this week. And I'm excited because we'll be recapping on the last 2 quarters. So working on it is making plans and then putting those in motion and not just reacting. So being in that Eisenhower time matrix or planning matrix, like
Right.
quadrant two. The other question was, what's the biggest mistake people make when running their business? Well, besides that, not following what we just said, working, I think two big ones that I'll just answer two things in that. One of them is they don't master delegating and they have these self-limiting beliefs that they can do everything better themselves. And then that's really a sign that they're never going to go beyond maybe just a few people in their firm potentially because they want to micromanage and they don't learn how to delegate. And nobody really teaches you how. It's a lot of books, reading, talking, and hard knocks and figuring out the hard way a lot of times, but there's better practices than others. And I think the other one is time management because there's just so many distractions. I think a lot of business owners have ADHD and maybe it was a superpower to help them be good at it, but it also can be to their detriment if they can't learn how to hone in and make the most out of their time. So time batching, say having goals, those types of things of being able to having a break, but coming back and not letting your inbox be your to-do list, for the whole day.
Thank you for sharing that, Ruby. On that last point, one of your books is titled "Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice Without Losing Your Mind," and I was reminded of that book when you were just speaking right now. What's a key piece of advice from that book or from your experience, for a lawyer who might feel overwhelmed, perhaps because of all this micromanagement, and maybe they're on the verge of burnout? What advice would you give an attorney like that?
A lot of great things to think about. I think one of them is there's like a season for everything. And so it is important to know the signs of burnout. You should have vacations scheduled or at least breaks. I'm trying really hard to give myself 1 day off a week right now just because of the volume of work we have. And I know that that helps give me clarity. So they usually say you enjoy your vacation. It's more about the enjoyment anticipation of a vacation, having one. So I think if you have one, schedule the next one, and that way you constantly have one on the books. Just like if you go to a therapist, schedule the next appointment or the doctor's appointment, scheduling that. So having those breaks in on a daily basis as well as weekly and quarterly, I think that's a really key point so that you don't burn out. And then I think also just reevaluating your goals and remembering why you're doing what you're doing because maybe you're just getting on the hamster wheel and you realize, no, you don't need to do as this much, or maybe you can be more profitable with less cases if you get rid of the less, paying or more high maintenance clients. So that's really the benefit of that whole working on the business is sitting back, getting statistics, good numbers, value data, and starting to really evaluate what you really want. And that's one of the biggest points from on both of my books.
That's fantastic. Shifting gears a little bit to your own sort of personal brand and how you've built it up, through the podcast, through your books, and so on and so forth. What have you learned from that experience about how lawyers can effectively build a personal brand themselves and potentially share their expertise, given today's media landscape of podcasts and LinkedIn and all the different other social media channels that exist?
I'm grateful that I live in a time when all I really need is like a little light ring and a cool microphone. I don't even need this fancy microphone. I just got it. And a little tripod and a fancy camera and I can have like my own broadcast studio, throw on some makeup and have fun with that. One of my next meetings is talking about how we're going to use an AI bot to try to when we do lives to try to turn that into more business and convert it into consults. We're in a really great time where we have this available. And if you have the right, attitude, personality, you can really build a fun brand, whatever what is you want. I enjoy the podcasting because I love the one-on-one conversations. And it's like making that time to have that conversation as opposed to just going hurriedly through life and not stopping. It's sort of like a virtual coffee, but without the coffee sometimes, and everyone else is listening.
Yep. No, that's great. I love it. Uh,
So the funny thing is that that's not how I get like law firm clients, but I love it so much, and it's for my other interests with law practice management. But by asking all those questions and learning and meeting people, like in fact, we met at the ABA Tech Show, which I forgot to mention. the co-vice chair, and love legal tech. And March 2026 in Chicago again. So take a look at that and get ready for that. This is what allows me to be out there and learn and improve my law firm. So there's a lot of synergies between the two.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a perfect segue, I think, Ruby, into technology. And first of all, congratulations again on being part of the ABA Tech Show Leadership Tech Show last year, or the last Tech Show was fantastic. I got the opportunity to meet with you and some other wonderful folks, and looking forward to the next one. While many lawyers are focused on using AI for legal research, summarization, or drafting, you look at it from a practice management perspective. I'm sure, given all the things that you work on and that you've seen. What are some of the most powerful yet overlooked ways that attorneys can use technology and AI to make their firms more efficient and profitable? Not just from a practice of law perspective, but also from a back end operations or however else you want to look at it perspective.
There's so much technology out there right now that it's overwhelming. So I think one of the biggest things is to make a flow chart from the beginning to the end and then figure out what your tech stack is and how are you everybody's underutilizing their tech stack basically. Figure out, what would be a way to make it more efficient. What you have to do is sort of evaluate the operations and the tech at the same time, because sometimes you did a certain operation away because the tech that you used at the time was the way it was. But then sometimes that changes. It's sort of that whole idea of like, you can't just do things the way you've always done it just because that's the way it's been done. You have to sort of sit back, have a paradigm shift and see how could we do it better. And that goes with the ability of like getting away and working on the business, getting away and sort of seeing the big picture. So one other thing I think a lot of people believe is that like it's sort of like a bragging right. The more people you have in the firm, then like the bigger you are. That's not the way tech companies think. They think about they brag about how little people they have and how much they can accomplish. And so when we were moving over to case management software, a different one, I wasn't planning to hire more team members until I knew how much time work was really needed after we fully incorporated that new case management software. So I think we could talk hours and hours on that question you just asked, but I think the key point is just doing an audit of your existing systems and tech, and then figuring out what would be like the best bang for your buck, like low hanging fruit, as well also thinking what's your anchor program. And if you love that, and then continue to expand from there. Honestly, like I need almost like another life to go play around with all the different AI tools that are out there, because when I see them online, I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, I need to go be an immigration lawyer, or I need to go get on this podcast, But
That's
that's
fun.
just it's almost like you need to have a fractional or a CTO and that can just go play around with all that. But there's a lot of great leaders in that space who are also posting regularly. There's podcasts and there's newsletters, and I go to a lot of legal tech conferences too, and that helps me keep a pulse of what's going on. But you should have someone else in the firm who's also your expert, so that if you're the primary attorney, that you're not the only one who's keeping in tabs on all this.
That's great advice for sure. Yeah, there's so many shiny new objects out there that one can be tempted to just kind of go out and try and grab them all. You made an interesting point, Ruby, which is that you believe that tech within organizations is underutilized. Can you give maybe one or two examples of that?
One of the things that made me really realize it was back when we went to eh, it was like March 3rd or 4th, 2020. And we were like, "Oh, we've got to go virtual." And then I realized like I was evaluating all my tech, or I had an assistant looking at it, and we realized like we could have texted 10 different ways, but we were only using it one way. We had a lot more functionality in our existing tech stack, but we weren't using it fully. And when I listen to people complain about their case management software, it really a lot of it's because they don't know how to use it. And if they were to use that, they might be able to get rid of some other programs or to use it to more fully and save a lot of time. What I've also noticed is a lot of the programs are improving constantly and adding new features. And so if you're not paying attention, you're not watching their webinars, their newsletters, or going to their trade show or whatever, then or just talking to whoever your contact is, then you're not going to know what his functionality and capability is.
That makes sense. Moving to your specific firm. So, what are some of the, at a high level, tech tools or functions that those tech tools do within your own firm's stack? And you're welcome to mention names or not, but what are some solutions that you think are particularly valuable for a high volume document intensive practice like the one that you run?
We use Lawmatics for our CRM. We're working on using different bots with our social media so that we can convert them into consults. We have the online scheduling available on our website through Lawmatics. Then we FileVine for our case management software. And we have ChatGPT, we have what are other stuff we use? We have the Lawmatics, we're able to get rid of the MailChimp but we have it for the Power Strategy group. We have Zoom. I do have Otter, but I think I just saw a post recently that says that ChatGPT's recording feature, we could get rid of Otter. But anyway, there's so many different programs out there. We have some different drafting and research tools that are more specific to immigration. Really, one of my biggest goals is to try to minimize the amount of programs that we use and sort of stay within, less programs that can accomplish a lot more. We've used Dropbox for many years, but we're using it mostly just for some ancillary projects. But most everything's now in FileVine, and yeah, that's sort of some of our tech stack right now.
How do you evaluate which new technologies are sort of worth implementing? Like, what does it take for a particular product or platform or tool to sort of make the cut within your firm?
When I was talking about like an anchor program, like that right now for us is FileVine. And so we're looking to see like what integrates with that we could use that we might need. And so when that's one of the big things to think about. You don't want to have a big your anchor like case management product that doesn't integrate with other programs that you want to use. Oh, I forgot to use. We're also in the G Suite, Gmail G Suite
They
space
keep
as well.
changing the name all the time, yes, but
Yeah,
Google
whatever we call
Workspace, yeah.
it. Google, a Google person, yeah. And so that also matters because you want it to integrate with everything else. And so I think about like what functionality do I need? Do the programs that I have or I want to have integrate with others? How long have those programs been around? Are they here for the long haul? Who are the founders? Do they really, care and a passion? Are they just trying to maybe sell? What are they thinking? And are they going to be around? And what's the customer service and other customers that use the program and those types of things. I did a whole session on this ABA Tech Show a few years ago. There's a lot to think about. And one of the other key points I think we should keep in mind is sometimes maybe you're upset with a program. Maybe talk to them, give them feedback, and maybe they can make a change. If there's enough people, enough clients, customers, before you having to pick up and change, because leave and do something else, because that can be very, difficult and disruptive to your team. Because the tech is changing so much, but at the human side, that's really where the implementation and getting the buy-in from your team is a whole nother component. But you have to keep that in mind while you're deciding which programs to actually hire and use.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a great point about reaching out to your existing vendor because sometimes they can do it, and if they can, then that's fantastic. Because I think as someone who we try to be as good to our customers as possible. So if somebody comes to me saying, "Hey, we want to we want this or that to be changed," we'll do our best, and I'm sure there's many others who will try their best as well. Looking a little bit ahead, and this is sort of a turbulent time. A lot is going on from a technology perspective and another perspective from other perspectives as well. But what recent or new developments in AI have you found most promising for either your own practice or just for broader law practice management?
One of the big areas is like drafting and research. I noticed that that's the most like legal, like attorney or law clerk heavy space. And a lot of my legal assistants get a little intimidated by that. And so we're exploring and demoing different tools out there to see how we can leverage those programs to be able to spend a lot less time in creating having drafts. Like I think we're in an era where you should never be, writing anything from scratch. It should always be like you get a draft and then you go from there, or you're using these different programs to get use a starting point. In reality, it should have saved you hours from prior time. So I think that's really a big space right now. If you could, I think the low hanging fruit is like your automation of your procedures. Also, another tool that I'm looking at with Candle AI is with the connecting your case management software to your email and having more specific drafts for your specific client information, more than just like Gemini and some of those other tools are out there because it's tied to your case management software. So I think saving time in the email space and the drafting And really, if you just think about do an audit of your time, where do your firm spend a lot of the time and going in and just sort of trying to reduce the automations and leverage the technology as much as possible.
This has been a great conversation. Just a couple of quick questions to wrap it up. Given everything that you've seen and some of which that you've shared, not just in technology, but also sort of in society and politics and everything else that's going on, what advice would you give to an attorney who's maybe earlier in their career, maybe just just coming out of law school today and looking to navigate all of these different things that are happening within the practice of law and society beyond?
You could buy my book. It's on Amazon, Power Up Your Practice. But there's 25 chapters, and there's a lot about the history of the practice of law to the future practice of law and operations, management, leadership, and side hustles, and closing up your practice and buying a building. A lot of great stuff. So it's for anybody. I think the listen to podcasts, find a few good ones that you can just listen to, keep learning. Find a few people you can watch on LinkedIn, some thought leaders that you admire and want to continue to see what they're up to. Go to some conferences. It might feel like it's hard to add that to your budget, but it's a great convening place of ideas and minds, and it helps sort of just like kickstart your networking that you might not. Might take you years to meet those same people potentially. And just one idea can completely change your life, your business, your practice. And so that's why I get excited when I go to these conferences. I'd say so constantly be learning from podcasts, books, conferences, have a few mentors at different places you sort of see yourself in the future, maybe 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, and stay in touch with nurture that relationship. Ask them for coffee, nudge them for call every once in a while. I know I do that, and that's so valuable. Let's see, just continue to evaluate your goals. Just because you became a newly minted attorney doesn't mean like, you're just going to be an autopilot for the next 20, 40 years or something like that. You don't have to practice law. You could do something different. You could find some synergy with the law and some other hobby interest of yours. And it's sort of like what I'm doing. So find ways to stay alive and excited about what you do, because that'll help you be a better person and lawyer and member of your community.
That's wonderful advice. Speaking of getting in touch, what's a good way for attorneys or audience members of this podcast to get in touch with you?
Probably the best would be just on LinkedIn, Ruby Powers on LinkedIn. And then I have powerupyourpractice.com, powerstrategygroup.com for those that business. And then I am also, if you're in immigration, rubypowerslaw.com. But LinkedIn's a good source to get to everything else.
Sounds good. And final question for you, Ruby, today. What is one question that I should have asked you, but that I didn't? I always like throwing that one at the end. Just
You love that, huh? I think I will say one of my favorite hobby what's a current hobby? Well, one of my hobbies is gardening, because that keeps me grounded, and I have one at my office and my house, and so it's fun, and that's sort of like a therapeutic garden. And then my other fun thing is that my daughter told me about this Ninja Creamy thingy around Christmas, and so like I'm really good at making like healthy sorbets with it, and that's almost like my dessert every night. I've almost like monopolized the Ninja Creamy from the whole family, so I won't let them know that, but I guess I told all of you guys that, but
That's wonderful. Well, Ruby, thank you so much. This has been a fun and insightful conversation in so many different ways. I really appreciate your taking the time to share your learnings with me and with our audience. So thank you so much, and take care.
anytime. Thanks a lot.
The Litigator's Edge podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.